Hello, everybody. I'm going to light my candle while people hop on. I have a thing for woodwick candles because they sound like a campfire, and it makes me really happy. And I know only the YouTube peeps are seeing this just now because no one's on yet, but still. Hello, welcome. Hi. Happy, what day is it? It is Thursday. I'm doing this live on time for the first time in like 3 weeks. I try to go live every Thursday, and it hasn't been super on time. Not last week. Week before last week, I got to go live with Krista because I was actually in Virginia, and that was my most recent live on here. But yeah, hi, hello. Hi, Tia. Hi, happy Friday. Hi, Greg. Hello, long time no see. Greg was at the conference we just did, so I just got hyped. Welcome. How you guys doing? The energy of this week is a lot better than what we started out the month with in a lot of ways, and I am embracing it fully. Lots of creativity coming back, lots of room for spiritual stuff to kind of come into the day-to-day. I am all here for it because it's needed so desperately needed. Oh, how are you all doing on this lovely Thursday? I had such a fun time. We just hosted the Sacred Spaces gathering this past weekend, and I still feel like a little bit of a spiritual hangover from it just because it was so incredible and amazing, and there were so many fun spiritual peeps there and education learning stuff and energies about and I have my hair stuck in on my earring. Ow! You know when that happens? Like, then I'm like pulling on my little Don't mind me while I like undo my hair from my earring. Ow! Yeah, so it was really incredible, and anyone who was there, I hope you got so much out of it. I got so much out of it, and I can't wait to host another gathering for responsible spiritual exploration and community, because, man, it was so much fun. Okay. You're being stubborn about cutting your wristband? I'm so glad you're being stubborn about that. I'm so glad. It was really fun. I can't wait to do another one. I feel positive going into the next month, but energy feels like it's pushing me. Energy's pushing a lot of us. So Jesus, I wish this hair would get off my earring. It's fine. It's just going to sensory bother me for a minute. The energy of right now is really fast, and so a lot of us are feeling this energy pushing us, mostly because it kind of is. Everything is finally direct. So all the planets are now moving direct, which is a lovely and amazing. Pluto's in a new sign, which happened a couple weeks ago. Made a ton of videos about that. And now Uranus has gone direct too this past weekend. And that's just on the astrological perspective. So if you think about like the actual gravity and weight of all these planets pulling on us, they're all going in a forward motion. That is just like a base level thing, is we are being pushed forward into this next month. But also on like an energetic trend place, we are finally getting some energy back from the like heaviness that ended out 2023. So stuff is kind of finally starting to come back into our field of vision, into our court. And a lot of the things that I've been seeing, not just in, communities that I'm a part of and people I've been working with, but also when I look at the energy of it, is a lot of us are kind of reconnecting with our spiritual abilities and reconnecting with the spiritual things that we started diving into 2020 and 2021, and then kind of got put on the back burner over the last 2 years. We're kind of having the energy to reconnect with those. Now that looks different for everybody, and I don't want you to be like, oh, it's these symptoms, I should be having these things happen, because it's not like that. It definitely looks different for every single person. So some of us might be being pushed to kind of like journal and rest, and others might be like, I all of a sudden want to take this course, or I want to do this thing. Whatever feels good for you, we just finally have the energy to do it. So embrace how that's showing up for you, because for real, it's been a lot. Why has this been the longest, craziest week? Again, it's our first week with all the planets direct, so a lot of like fast moving energy, tons of stuff going on. I agree. This week has been really wild for me because I flew back from Virginia because we were hosting the gathering out there on Monday. Was it Monday? It must have been Monday. I flew back on Monday, and then I had like kind of immediately dove back into like work and tax season and all of that. So I completely empathize. It's been a lot. Plus with like my kids, it's been a mission. So I completely understand that. I slept all day today. Yeah, there's a lot of like recuperating and like figuring out where we're at. The other thing I want to say too is if you feel a need to make a physical change in some capacity, whether that is like hey, I really need to like cut my hair and dye it purple, or I need a new piercing, or I need to rearrange a room or something like that. That also tracks because, again, all of the energy is moving us forward, and we like to feel like we're moving forward. And the energy of moving forward does make us want to do things and change stuff and alter things. And so keep that in mind as well. If you feel like that, that's why. That's why. I got a haircut yesterday, new shoes today. Yeah, exactly that, cat mom. Exactly that energy. But yeah, it was a really cool experience. I also got to hang out with Rebecca, the ghost guide. We actually shared a B&B. So if you follow Rebecca and Catherine, like officially Catherine, we all shared a B&B together, and we hung out during the conference, and it was super fun. I highly recommend, like, if you ever want a rapid expansion in your own personal spiritual psychic abilities, hang out with other spiritual psychic people, because it happens. It's our cells literally talk to each other, and we just like magnify and magnify and magnify. And when we do it all together, it's just an incredible activation, opening experience. And so it was fun to already like be with spiritual people at the conference, but then we got to film some content together, which will be coming out on YouTube pretty soon, and just hang out and talk weird psychic spiritual stuff all weekend. And it was really activating and really validating, because you can like bounce stuff off of each other, which I appreciated so much, and I appreciate about them. And they both have different areas of expertise as opposed to me, so we could all kind of build into that sort of space, which was really cool. It was just a really cool thing. So it was lovely. I started drinking tea again. It was strange, as I haven't for months. So I'm glad you started drinking tea again, though. That sounds lovely. That sounds amazing. It sounds very grounding. Tea is a very grounding food to drink. Like, people sometimes discredit food as grounding, and oftentimes when people come into consultations with me and they're like, hey, how can I stop eating stuff all the time? My first go-to will be looking at their energy and being like, are you in need of grounding? And a lot of times the answer is yes. And there's very specific kind of foods that, like, food in general helps with grounding, but tea is a really good grounding food. Dark chocolate is a really good grounding food. Lots of like root vegetable style stuff, really solid grounding foods. Like mine is go-to potatoes every single time. Those really actually help your energy ground and connect you back to earth, and then bring some energy back up in for you. So if you are looking for more of that, if you're struggling with that, food can totally help, and just having a minute to drink some tea and like do that will really actually ground your energy. There's a lot of different foods. Yeah. French fries count as grounding for sure. They actually are really grounding. I mean, the less processed, the better. Like if they're super duper crispy, they're not as much grounding. But root vegetables in general are really, really grounding. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, tea is grounding. Stuffed animals are grounding. That's why I originally purchased Hermes the hamster, which is a wormy stuffy. He's not present. He's upstairs. But I will have him sit on my lap to like help me ground my energy too. That's a really easy way of grounding. But yeah. Can I please talk about the benefits of yoga? Unfortunately, not really. Like, I love doing yoga for myself, but I'm not a yoga practitioner, so I don't feel like I can adequately speak to the benefits of yoga. I will say from a spiritual perspective, it is a form of physical movement meditation, or it can be, depending upon the type of yoga you're practicing. I do go to yoga very often, and I'm particularly passionate about it because it gives me space to channel while moving, and I tend to get different things when I'm channeling and moving, or meditating while moving. So that is a huge spiritual benefit of yoga. But as far as like the in-depth spirituality of the different modalities of yoga, because there's so many different so many different things and types and things you can do with yoga, I don't feel like I'm the appropriate person to speak to all of that. However, anything you're doing that is movement that allows you to kind of meditate at the same time, whether that's running on the treadmill or taking your dog for a walk or doing yoga, where you can kind of just tap in, get into that theta brainwave while you're moving around, is going to be spectacular. It's going to be lovely for you. So yeah. Wait, what do you do with Hermes? Hermes the hamster is a grounding tool for me. So I originally bought Hermes because he's a wormy stuffy. So you can pop him in the microwave and heat him up, and then I can put him on my lap, and he helps me ground my energy. Or he did, before Hermes, the god, Hermes all over him. So I do use him for that, though. It's funny, he traveled with me all the way to Virginia because Hermes, the actual deity, like, demanded it. And then he was, like, on the stage during the conference that we just did, just for one day. And then I took him off and put him away so that Hermes didn't get all of the credit. But, yeah, it was very fun. Ooh, looking for an ultimate vacation read. What do you suggest? I dig historical fiction. Okay. If you want a good vacation read and you dig historical fiction, if you've read either of Madeline Miller's works, I highly recommend those. Those are phenomenal. They're historical fantasy, but they're Greek myth retellings. One is the Iliad and one is the Odyssey from Circe's perspective. And they're so, so well done. So I highly recommend those. I also really, really love, especially for a vacation read, it's not historical fiction, but it is fiction, and it's very light on the fantasy side of it and incredibly high vibe. House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Amazing. If you have not read House in the Cerulean Sea, it heals something in your inner child soul very deeply. I highly recommend that one. I read a really good historical fiction recently. What was it? Oh gosh, what's it called? I can't look it up too because it's on my app. So I would have to scroll away from you all. But it's a really beautiful historical fiction about a woman who lived in Florence and then during the Medici's. It's not super vacation-y though, so I'll let that one go. But that one's really good. Oh, yes, oh my gosh, I always forget how to say it, but the SPQR, which is a word in Latin that you can say to honor Rome. I've read it too. It's so good. All of her work is amazing. And I've channeled a lot of people in that book. A lot of people in that book. I've worked with while they're on the other side. Let me just tell you, channeling Julius Caesar, dude's a dick. He is such an asshole. He just refers to himself in the third person constantly. He's got the biggest ego ever. Julius Caesar thinks Julius Caesar is super fantastic. I've had people ask me about that. Have you talked to him? I'm like, yeah, briefly. He sucks. He's not fun to communicate with. There's so many more. Yes, he was bald. Yes, he's very touchy about it. He has emotions. Let's just say that if I was in the Senate back in the Julius Caesar time, I understand their motives for the adventure they did. Okay? I get it. Have I read All the Light We Cannot See? I have not read All the Light We Can. Thank you for the galaxy. Look how pretty that is. Oh, thank you so much. That was amazing. I don't know if I've ever gotten one of those. Thank you. I feel so special. It was so shiny. Thank you so much. I've not read All the Light I Cannot See, but I have, it's on my list, and I've heard really, really good things about it. Alexander the Great is very interesting. He's actually a lot more stoic than people give him credit for. I channeled him in, not very extensively, because honestly, I'm more into channeling women, to be totally honest. And unless I need the men's context on the women's stories, I'm not super passionate about channeling men in. No offense, I just want to get the stories that haven't been super told, so I like to speak to women, because a lot of times their stories weren't told, unless it was through the filter of men writing down history. And so I'm really passionate about that. But however, with that new Alexander movie coming out, whatever, I channeled him and hey, people are viewing your life. And the biggest thing is he was ticked about the representation for his wife, or his lover. I didn't even see the movie. I was just like, hey, I wonder what this historical figure thinks, and just kind of tapped in and see if he was willing to talk to me, which he was barely willing to talk to me. Barely. Which was fine, because I was barely willing to talk to him. And I was like, hey, have you do you know about this? And I kind of showed the trailer, and he was like, is that the person supposed to be playing my wife? She's way too weak and way too young. And I was like, all right. And that was the biggest takeaway from Alexander the Great that I got, which is very, very interesting. Again, only recently, or only for a little bit did I talk to him. I've not watched content from Psychics. I will look at that though. That sounds interesting. What did the ghost look like in that recent? So first of all, the ghost wasn't fully in frame. So the ghost passed by and went that way towards the door. I'm trying to do it on the screen when it's backwards. Went towards the door, opened the door, and went out. And then you don't really see the ghost in frame again until the smoke detector drops down, but at that point I'm pretty sure it's almost fully on the ceiling. It was just kind of a shadowy thing. I don't even know if it was fully a human entity, to be totally honest, and I'm not speculating on it fully because I wasn't there and I wasn't able to feel out the energy, because usually I look at things and then I also feel their energy signature, because things can change how they look. Ghosts can change how they look, entities can change how they look, deities can change how they look, people who lived in the ancient past can change how they look. Like, they have energy manipulation over their image, but it's harder to manipulate your full energy signature, which is easier for me to understand when I'm in the space with them or if I'm fully channeling into that, which is harder to do for a video. Easier to do if it's like live and we're doing like a Zoom call or something. I can totally get into your space and get into that sort of zone there. But with like a video, with it like being past tense, basically, it was really interesting. So they had a humanoid-esque shape, but I have a feeling it wasn't necessarily a full human, or it could be some like thought form. Here's the thing, that video, that ghost had to have so much freaking energy to throw that smoke detector from the ceiling to the ground. And I do think it actually happened, though. Like, that realtor was ballsy, like, truly ballsy for the way that she just challenged that thing. But I think it pulls from maybe some thought form spirit type energy, plus some perhaps like additional, like it's maybe comboed with a different entity, because it didn't feel quite normal ghosty. Which I did meet some lovely ghosts this weekend. I met a couple really lovely ghosts. I met this one couple. I'll tell you the story very briefly. I stayed in this house in Richmond that was like a B&B for our writing retreat that we were hosting out there, and there was a ton of ghosts all through that whole place, all through the whole, I mean, it's, you know, it's Virginia, so there was tons of ghosts everywhere, but this house in particular was like 120 years old, and there were two ghosts in there that I ended up making very nice friends with. Their names were Martha and Yvette. Martha was from the 60s. She lived there in the 60s, and Yvette was from like about 100 years ago, and they had a lovely relationship with each other, and it was absolutely adorable and precious. There was some things that I did have to remove in order to make them more comfortable in their own house, though, so there was some yucky stuff there, but it was really nice. It was really, really nice. What kind of services do I offer? So I do a bunch of different things. I do soul readings where I do like one-on-one type stuff with you, where we dive into your soul type, who your spirit guides are, past life things, looking at your higher self, your energy field, block removals, do tons of that sort of thing. Those are a couple months out waiting list wise, or not, you don't have to apply for a waiting list, but to book it, it's a couple months out. And I'll also do group readings for that too. I also have courses on how to open your own psychic abilities. So like a little small course that just does like a week-long deep dive into channeling, and then a longer one that's like a 9-week super how to pull blocks, how to activate your psychic abilities, like very in-depth. And then also one that's how to communicate and create your own language with the universe. So how to understand the signs you're receiving, get more signs, and actually create like a dialogue back and forth between the universe so that you don't feel like you're just flying off through space. Those are some of the base services I offer. Plus I also have a Patreon with many different tiers with many different things, including like a monthly meditation, a monthly bonus videos, monthly Q&A calls for certain tiers. There's tons of stuff in there, and that's only expanding continually. So thank you for asking, though. Do you have tips for second guessing yourself? I believe I have abilities, but sometimes I struggle with it. First of all, it is incredibly human and normal to second guess yourself. And I always want to start off saying that, because I think a lot of times we get in our head and we're like, oh, that person's super confident. I've been doing this basically since I was born, but professionally, like, did readings exchanges in high school and have done readings on from there. And I still will second guess myself sometimes, despite the fact that I can hear and see and have gotten all these validations and whatever. So just know that it's totally normal to do that. And you're not in any way less of a psychic or not as good at this because you second guess it. The second thing is, it's not entirely on you to figure it all out. You can absolutely ask your guides to validate pings for you. You're not doing this in a vacuum. So if you're like, oh, I think I got a ping, or I think I got this information or something like that, awesome. And if you start second guessing yourself, be like, okay, guides, like, I need validation before I move on this information, or I need some sort of like reassurance from you that this is actually the ping. And if I don't get it, you better try to ping me again, because I'm not understanding. And that's totally fine. Like, put pressure on the magical, omnipotent beings that are around you that understand your map and your plan, to help you feel more confident. That's totally good. I ask for validation all the time, and it might come in a ton of different ways. So it might come like all of a sudden the next song on the radio is like, you got it done, or something like that, or you look down, it'll be 11:11, or you walk outside and a bird flies right past your face. I mean, there's a ton of different ways that you can get validation. Yeah. Great question. Yeah. Oh yeah, no problem. I'm happy to help with that. I saw one up here that I wanted. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk on this. There's two questions I want to be sure to talk about that I just saw. One was, when did you first experience your psychic abilities? When I was a little kid, I didn't think anything I was doing was abnormal. I thought everything I could do and see and feel was completely normal, and that everyone was doing and seeing and feeling. And when media or my friends or my parents, whatever, would talk about like imaginary friends, I was like, yeah, like, the weird spirits that are down by the water. I lived up in the forest. Or like the nature spirits, or when I walk into a party, all of those different beings around people, everyone's imaginary friends. That makes total sense. It wasn't until I was about 7 or 8 where I was like, ew, I don't think everyone else can do that. And that was when I kind of started being like, trying to shut it down, which didn't work. And eventually I opened it back up, and now I do this, obviously. So really important in moments in my life, but I don't remember not being psychic, if that makes sense. The other thing that someone asked was, oh, now I forgot it. Hold on, I want to see it really quick because it was a good question. What was it? Oh, I remember. Do you ever see your own future? Here's the deal. Future sight is unreliable for anyone because the future is incredibly mutable. It's incredibly malleable. We have way more pull on the future than we give ourselves credit for. We can manifest things in, we can switch timelines, we can open doors, we can do all sorts of stuff in the energetic future. So do I look at my own future? On occasion. Usually I'll do it via like card pull or channeled writing, or like asking my guides to be like, all right, what is this? I will look at future and readings and stuff like that, but I always, if anyone's ever gotten a reading with me, I'll always be like, this is just what the energy looks like right now. This is kind of like the highest probable future that I am seeing for the next couple months. Not, hey, this is definitely going to happen. I never speak about the future in that way because you absolutely can change your future, manifest things in, pull things in, shift things. You can do tons of different stuff in that way. So I do look at my own future on occasion. However, in my opinion, it is more important for me to understand that I can decide what my future will be and manifest in things and shift things and that sort of thing, and prepare myself for anything else that might come through on a spiritual and energetic level, as opposed to trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen, because it's never going to happen exactly the way you see it. That's just not how the future works. That is such a good question, though. Like, such a good question. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you found me from the realtor video and you like me so much already. You're so kind. I so appreciate that. Okay, so I've not talked to Anne Boleyn or any of the wives of Henry VIII. However, next week I'm going to go see Six with my youngest daughter, and I plan on doing some channeling after the fact to see if they have opinions on it, essentially. So I'm going to invite them, if anyone wants to, from that time period, come and watch the musical with me and then channel them. I love to channel historical figures in relation to modern media, and so be like, hey, this is the story, this is the narrative that's being told about you. What's wrong about it? Tell me this. What are the corrections? What are different things? What do you wish would have been shown? And you'd be surprised how many historical people and beings will be like, oh man, like, I actually loved that. That was great. Totally wasn't how it happened, but I loved that energy. Like, whatever it is. People, they actually, like, oftentimes will embrace different stories. And I don't always explain to them, like, oh, this is on a movie. I explain, like, hey, this is the story that's being told about you right now. And they can kind of go from there. So I'm going to channel them, and I will probably keep you guys updated as to what they say about their experiences and in relation to Six. So, yeah. That is a great question. Oh, hold on. Now I want to know if how Hamilton feels about Hamilton. Honestly, probably not great. The Founding Fathers, I don't know how they would feel, to be totally honest. And I kind of am hesitant to ping them because they're not all lovely. I'll talk to like Ben Franklin. Maybe I'll channel him in. I never have actually. But I could. But, well, if they want to talk to me. That's the other thing with channeled history. Like, I always am like, hey, if you want to talk to me. And some people are like, fuck right off. And I'm like, all right, I will fuck right off. And then some people are super in, like, oh, yeah, tell me what's going on down there. So, yeah. Yeah, I am very passionate about channeled history because I truly feel like it's, you know, with inner child stuff, when you do inner child work, whether that's through like a therapy, mental health perspective, which mental health perspective is just as important as spiritual, if not more so, as well as if you're doing it in like a spiritual perspective, you kind of re-raise yourself from childhood to not have all the trauma that your child had, like your child self had. That's what I feel like with channeled history. By channeling people in and beings in from the ancient past, I can actually kind of re-raise our history and learn the stories that didn't get shared and understand things on a different level that didn't necessarily come up before or would be part of the normal narrative because we only have one story about this one thing from this culture that didn't even belong to that one, or, you know, vice versa. So I'm really passionate about it. I'm glad everyone else is hyped about it as well. I touched on, I haven't, Ooh, those are cool hands. I feel like that's what I do when I do an activation. I haven't really talked to Napoleon a ton. Napoleon is an interesting character. So not really, not super interested in it, though I would like to talk to him about his experience being imprisoned on an island, because I think that would be interesting. Can you turn your psychic senses on and off? Yeah, absolutely. Some of them I can't turn off as much, and that's not because it's not because I couldn't. I guess I could probably figure out a way to do it, but I'm comfortable having them kind of on all the time, so I just leave them on. But I always recommend, especially when I'm starting out to work with people or people who are working on their psychic abilities, always install an on-off switch, because you do not need to be on all the time. If anything, don't be on all the time. Don't constantly be this open gateway for energy to come chat with you all the time. So it can literally be a switch in your mind that you're like on, off. You can take an elevator ride up or an elevator ride down. You can have a turn knob. You can have a door you open and close. I have multiple rooms in my brain. This is going to sound complicated. To me, it's not. I know to many people it is. I have different rooms in my brain that I channel different things through. So my spirit guide room for my personal spirit guides is kind of always open, because if they need to get a hold of me, it's going to be a reason. I still have office hours where I'm like, hey, unless it's like a legit emergency, do not wake me up at 3 a.m. But I leave that kind of open so they can talk to me and hang out with me, because they're also like my friends. So they're kind of always around there. But things like my mediumship room, I keep that closed unless someone asks for their past loved one in a reading or something. That's not my specialty. That's not I can do it, but it's not something I'm super passionate about. And there's a lot of caveats that come with mediumship and past life reading or past loved one readings. So I kind of keep that closed. But I'll open different higher self things or different rooms, etc., as I'm kind of going about. The one that I never really turn off, I can see energy with my physical eyes. And I could turn it off, I guess, but I've seen energy with my physical eyes my whole ass life. So to me, I'm like, it's just kind of normal way of seeing at this point. And it feels like things have less color, almost, is a weird way of saying it, if I turn it off. And I still have synesthesia anyway, so everything's really colorful up in here. So I keep it on pretty much all the time, which is really interesting, because when I'm in a pitch black room, all I see is just the energy of things. And that ends up being really relieving. To just see like one part of vision at a time can be really helpful. But yeah, you can totally install an on and off switch. It is truly your ability, so therefore they have to listen to you. Do the ancient past people make comments about today's society? Yes. Yes, they do. So Locusta, who was a poisoner who lived in ancient Rome, who offed multiple ancient Roman emperors. I'm writing a book about her, historical fantasy about her, based on information I've channeled from her and her story in general. Because I've worked with her so closely, she's basically like a spirit guide of mine now. We have like a past life connection situation going on. And she's a spirit guide of mine now. She kind of hangs out. And I have asked her all sorts of things. The other day I was having some potato salad and I was like, hey, do you want to try potato salad? Which basically is you just kind of put it out there. You let the ghost or the guide or whatever kind of get the essence of that, and then you can eat it or throw it away, whatever you want to do. It depends on the offering situation, but for the most part, you can just do whatever you want to do with it. And she was like, what's a potato? And I was like, that is a valid question. How do I explain this to you? Because you didn't have potatoes when you walked on planet. And I'm talking to the part of her higher self soul that is her, if that makes sense, from that lifetime. So she doesn't know what a potato is. So I had to explain that. And they have many thoughts. Historical figures have many thoughts around the political climate and world, around our society today, around different struggles, that sort of thing. It depends on the person you're talking to, just like it does today. But it's very interesting trying to explain some stuff to them and getting their like very stark perspective on it. It's like, ooh, ouch. Many thoughts on potatoes. I was like, ah. Yeah. Oh, what? What type of spells do you love? So I actually don't consider myself a witch or a practicer of spells. I don't really do a lot of folk magic. I don't really do a lot of that stuff. Not because I don't think it's worked or something like that, but purely just because I don't have the energy for it. It just doesn't necessarily always vibe with me. I will say a couple spells that I do on a regular basis. One is I always activate my water. So I'll have my water bottle sitting on a sigil card. I'll show you them. I'll show you my sigil cards. These are actually crop circle cards, and they're really energy activated. So I'll have it sitting on whatever sigil for that day. And then I will activate my water that way, which is a form of spell work or energy work. So that's a big one. I'll also speak intention into the water every day. So I'm drinking something that is continually and perpetually activated and enriching my life in some capacity, depending upon my intentions for that space. There's some manifestation spells and rituals that I do. So there, I have a spell bowl over there with one of my manifestations in it, which is just a way to take it out of my head and put it somewhere else so the universe can focus on it and I don't have to. So I love doing that. And it's just kind of put your intention into different objects you would place in the bowl. So I have some herbs in there. I have some crystals in there. I have some ash in there from some of my incense. And then I wrote it on a piece of paper, popped it in there, and set those intentions. And it's pretty much as simple as that. I'll also talk to my incense and candles and stuff before I burn them and do spells that way, that kind of thing. Yeah, so good question. Like a pensive, kind of like a pensive. That is a solid, yeah, honestly, that's what it is. Whenever you put thoughts down on a piece of paper, it is literally a pensive. It's just not quite as boop, and we don't forget our thoughts. We just get to put them on a paper. I totally left the conference with a spiritual hangover. Yes, I did. Are there good and bad colors for people to have? No. So colors don't actually have, how can I describe this? Because colors don't have like a morality system for me. They just kind of mean different things when they show up based on the person that I'm actually channeling. So sometimes I'll be like, ooh, you got a lot of energy going up here, and it's showing up in like fuchsias and coppers and things like that. And then lower down on your body, it looks like the energy is kind of dimming and it's not as bright. So I'm not getting as bright of colors, but it looks like some green, earthy this or whatever. And those colors mean things to me because they're my system I've developed through synesthesia and through channeling. They mean something different to everybody. And it's also how the energy actually looks and moves that is impactful for me when I'm doing kind of readings and channeling and things like that. What I will say is the absence of color in a location is usually a sign that the body is holding a block or the energy is holding a block or limiting belief there. And when I find entities that are attached to people, which is not very often, you probably do not have one, don't worry about it. But on occasion I have found that, and they tend to show up as a very, very, very dark, almost like what's that black that absorbs all the colors that they got in the fight with the pink, the color pink, Vanta black, or is it, I think it's Vanta black. It's almost like that, like all of the colors go into that. And I'm like, ooh, there's something attached that's not yours. So there's not a good or a bad necessarily. There's just a lot of nuance to the colors. Thank you for saying my hair looks good. I super appreciate it. I really didn't do very much to it today, so I really appreciate that. Someone asked how often do I do lives. I try to do them at least once a week, typically on Thursdays. I might end up upping that because I have a lot of fun doing these. They make me super happy, but I try to do it at least on Thursdays. And I do post all the replays onto my YouTube, along with other videos too. So by all means, like, check that out if you want to watch some of those. But yeah, every Thursday. Yeah. How do you tell the difference between body dreams and clairvoyance dreams? Man, you guys are coming in good with the questions today. Love it. So the difference between body dreams and clairvoyance dreams. So we do dream on two different levels. We dream on the body level, and then we dream on like the spiritual or soul level. When it's a body dream, tends to be those dreams that are like really repetitive or really random, kind of rooted in life situations. That's the like, oh my gosh, all my teeth fell out, or I showed up and I don't have a pencil for the test and no one will give it to me, or you jump from here to here to here to here without a lot of continuity, and you wake up and you're like, that was a weird dream. And that's kind of it, where it doesn't necessarily have a lot of oomph. You're not thinking about it all day. You're just like, ooh, that was yucky. Okay, moving on. And those are usually the dreams that your body is expressing the feelings that you have pent up throughout the day. So your body's expressing out those feelings in those body-centric dreams so you don't have to process them through the day, which is really helpful. And I appreciate that, body. That's oftentimes what nightmares are too, is, if you're scared of something, etc., then your body subconscious is kind of processing through that. Now with a clairvoyant dream or a spiritual/soul level dream, it's going to be a little different than that. It feels like it has weight. And usually you're doing something that is very much out of your norm or feels very different from your actual current life. It's not rooted in like, this is what I feel like doing every day. It feels like there's people there talking to you, or a message is coming through, or you're in a different place or a different time, or you're doing something that seems like it's really important and you need to do that throughout the dream. And oftentimes those are the ones where you wake up and you're like, oh, that seemed like something. And you come and you kind of revisit it throughout the day because it has a different weight to it. Now, the more you get consciousness around this, the more you can have like lucid dreams or astral experiences as well while dreaming, which are very conscious. You know what you're doing. You know what's going on. So that can kind of bloom from that as well. And that is truly doing soul work and spiritual work while in the dreaming space. Yeah. I just know it's really vivid. Just saw an orb. I was wondering if you guys like on the live, because there was somebody who passed by. It's one of my guides that was walking around over there, and it like reflected off of this. So I didn't know if you guys had seen that. So yeah. Thank you. I actually got this thrifting this past week, and I was pretty stoked on that. Isn't that fun? I get snippets every time I try to shift and never really get the full experience though. Shifting is totally something you can do. Something that helps me when I think of shifting is if you're thinking of pages in a book being the different timelines, you can turn to the chapter you want to go to. And so then it feels like it's a lot more tangible. If that's kind of, instead of being like, I'm crafting this whole thing, just be like, oh, there's an incarnation of me over here and I'm going to go connect with them. And that can sometimes be really helpful for like shifting or astral even stuff. Can really help doing that. Oh, happy Imblick. Yeah, I don't necessarily practice that, but happy Imblick. I hope everyone has a blessed and wonderful day. And so yes, happy St. Bridget's Day too. I forgot all of that is on the 1st. Honestly, my time is all going because of the past week of the conference and everything. So it's a lot. Shifting as piano keys is a great idea too. So astral projection is something a couple of people are saying that they wish they could astral. And astral is amazing. Astral is incredibly, incredibly helpful. And it's something everybody can learn to do. Now, that being said, it's not something everyone has to learn to do. So I always want to put that out there. It does kind of tend to come with the natural progression of spiritual growth. The deeper you get into your psychic abilities and channeling things, etc., the more connected you get to your higher self, you tend to start leaning towards astral. There's a ton of different ways to do it. The first thing I always recommend is get really, really comfortable moving yourself. I said comfortable, weird, but comfortable moving yourself from normal, just sitting, to the channeling or theta brainwave. And I have tons of tips on how to do that in my courses, but that is the brainwave you get right before you fall asleep. So start practicing moving in and out of that brainwave as much as possible, because pretty soon you start to develop an energy movement of, I can now move my consciousness in and out of my physical space, because you're practicing moving through different layers of energy naturally. So that is like a first step to really help you start getting into the astral zone. Music helps. That helps with astral projection. Ask your guides to help. Always make sure that you do your spiritual hygiene before and after, so you're safe and protected during astral, because you're kind of just like going out there and doing stuff. You're never going to lose your body. That's not a thing. But you always want to make sure that you feel safe when you're exploring something like that, because it is like a bigger astral thing. And yes, theta would totally be helpful with shifting. Theta is where all the magic stuff happens. Theta is where you access different parts of your consciousness as well. So right now, our consciousness is focused on us right now in this incarnation, right? So if you think about it, you're like, okay, right now, this is what my consciousness is doing. You have a whole bunch more. This is just like a arc that you're living from the soul that you came to incarnate with, right? So you can change the focus of your consciousness to a different life experience. That's what shifting is in a lot of ways. There's different theories around it, but that is my spiritual and connective understanding. Hi, what are we doing? We're hanging out. We're just talking magic stuff. Yeah. Can reading Kindle spiritually activate you the way physical books do? Yeah, they totally can. Most of the books I actually read, I listen to most of them, which activates the same part of your brain as reading does. But whether those are fiction or nonfiction books, I predominantly read fiction. They are very activating and healing and definitely help with spiritual growth. But I do it via listening because that really helps. But I read digital books all the time. Those are still the stories. You'll still get that energy. And then also physical books, of course, you'll still get the energy there. It's just kind of your preference on what works best for you. And that's going to work. You're still going to get the energy there. Mm-hmm. I do have kids. I have 3 kids. They're all middle schoolers. All 3 of them. I'm scared listening to books doesn't count. Hell yeah, it counts. It totally counts. If anything, what I will say is when you listen to books, it's even like sometimes even more of a psychic exercise because you really can sit there and close your eyes and try to visualize and see and activate that way. If you really want to do it, like really get into something, that's totally a thing you can do. So listening to books 100% counts. It activates the same part of your brain as reading does. Have I channeled fictional characters before? I have a whole writing program based on channeling in fictional characters. The Forgotten Storytellers, which is my writing program. I also have a publishing company that I run with my business partner, Crystal and Sophia on here. Basically, we teach you how to write fiction books through channeling in your characters, through channeling in your worlds, and through your personal astrology and spirit guides to activate books and help those books heal and activate everyone who reads them. So yeah, I've channeled in so many characters, fictional characters, because they all exist in energetic reality in some way. So you can actually talk to and connect with them. And then you can also put them into your works as well. So yes, that is a passion of mine. I run a whole program about it. Some of the people in the chat have been in that program. So it's cool. Have I ever experienced an angel? Yes, I have. I've experienced incarnated angels. I've experienced non-incarnated angels. There's many different types of angels. So angels are in like a crossover realm. So we know how we talk about like the fairy realms and we're like, okay, there's realms of fairy and different types of fairies over there. Same with angels, just different ones, different realms. So I've talked to and worked with tons of different types of angels over the years. I am not super connected with archangel work necessarily, but I know some people that serves a lot of purpose for them. But that's, in my opinion, connecting with basically like Christian deities, which it is. And I did a lot of that when I was younger, being raised Catholic. So it's never been something I've been drawn to, but working with angels in general, really interesting. Really, really interesting. Also, there is a ton of incarnated angels on planet right now. Like more so than I think has ever incarnated on planet. There's a ton of incarnated angels on planet right now, which is really interesting. What are dragons like? Oh, one of my favorite questions. I'm actually about to do like a video series on this because so many people want to know about dragons right now, which I love. If you listen to one of the most recent podcast episodes, I literally have like partly a dragon type soul. I'm very passionate about dragons. Dragons are really, really interesting. They are a very heavy spiritual thing. They don't move through realms necessarily all that easily, nor do they have a lot of desire to. They can, but they are very, very interesting beings to work with. I will say the dragons I've worked with have a ton of personality and a lot of opinions. However, it sometimes takes some energy to get those opinions out, and it's usually opinions on things that you don't expect them to have opinions on at all. So, for example, my dragon guide, Boris, everyone must know he is a very large dragon. Why? Because he does not want to be known as a small dragon. It's a big deal. So, let it be known, Boris is large. But yeah, we stand Boris for sure. Yeah, so Boris is the best. I actually caught him on the Phasma box the other day, which was really cool. So Phasma box is a software where you can speak like a paranormal investigation software, and it actually picks up frequencies of different beings as well. And I was messing around with it when we were out at Sacred Spaces Gathering, the conference I was hosting. And if you want to attend future ones, we will have future ones, I promise. It was one of the coolest experiences of my whole life. But we were playing and messing around with it, and I was like, Boris, you want to try to talk? And it was like this deep, echoey, like, yes, like through the box. And I was like, okay, that's what Boris sounds like on the Phasma, which was really fun. Boris loves that you love Boris. Boris loves it whenever people love Boris, though he is shy, which is really sweet. It is more of a, like, oftentimes it's more mind-to-mind communication. There's a lot of things dragons can't say out loud because their mouth can't do it, and there's a lot of things we can't say of dragon language. There's many different types of dragon language that we can't say because we can't make our mouths do it. So it's a lot of like telepathic, basically, levels of communication through claircognizance or clairaudience. Or even sometimes like clairsentient stuff. So those are different psychic senses, by the way. If you want to know your psychic senses, I do have a free exercise for that in my bio, like totally free. You just download it and you can do the exercise to figure out like how you naturally energetically perceive things. Because everyone is psychic. It is not an exclusive club. We can all figure out how to do this, and I highly encourage we all do. But so a lot of times it's like a lot of just knowing and kind of pings back and forth, but he can say certain things actually out loud. Yeah. Probably a dumb question, but are there spirits of aliens? Yes, there are. There are definitely spirits of aliens. They're souls of aliens, spirits of aliens, all sorts of stuff. I don't usually mess with aliens because I've kind of been told not to from my spirit team, not because they're bad to mess with. It's just not my deal, which is fine. I acknowledge that and I own that, but I know some people that do serious alien work. It's really cool. As far as the travel dragons thing go, I think that's just forms that different guides take to protect you in travel. And I think it's sometimes easiest for us to ask for those travel dragons and understand that they're dragon forms and try to figure out what the forms of our actual guides that protect us in travel are. Because in my opinion, when I've communicated and worked with dragons, they're not, they can be guides, obviously, talking to Boris, but they're not everybody, like everybody doesn't have one. There's not that many. Like there's a lot, but there's not that many. That there would be that many, especially multiple of them. So I think it's oftentimes our travel guides are like, whatever form you'll accept me in. And so if we call in like them as a dragon or a bird or whatever, a giant gelatin monster, they will come and protect us in those sorts of ways. So highly recommend tapping into your travel guides. Yeah. Dragons did come on Earth at one point. There was like an overlap. Think of a Venn diagram. When the vibration of the planet was a lot higher, the Venn diagram was a lot more together, and there was more space for dragons and fairies and the like to walk around on planet here. And then as the vibration got lower, those circles pulled apart. And it was harder for them to walk around and hang out on planet here. And then now it's kind of coming back together, which is why we're starting to see things again with our physical eyes. We're starting to have more spiritual interactions, those types of things. Yeah. Do you hear a response from a baby while pregnant? That is a fabulous question. It truly depends on the experience. Sometimes souls enter the body literally during birth, like literally during birth. That is when they come in. So you don't necessarily get a response directly from your baby, but you can still talk to the soul that's like out theirs. But you might not always get a response. Sometimes souls are in there the whole time with the mom. It really depends on your pregnancy and your experience. So yes, you can get answers. I had very different birth experience. It was a whole thing. The soul of my first kiddo popped on planet when he was born. Technically, he was born like not breathing and not really alive. They had to like revive him, and that's when his soul entered. So didn't really have one before then. Wasn't connected, and then it like popped in. So and then my youngest one I could talk to in utero all the time. She was very communicative. So yeah, it's a both. Spiritual hygiene. Should we do this with our kids? Currently he's too young to teach how. So you can. What I always recommend if you're going to do spiritual hygiene on someone else, first of all, ask them. If you can't, obviously if he's like a 2-year-old or something and he can't say yes, ask higher self. See if you get permission, like, hey, higher self, can I do this? Or send the energy out for them to receive if they so choose. So instead of like forcing the energy on them, be like, you will be clean. Use like send the energy of cleansing. And if they're feeling yucky and they subconsciously want to have some better feelings come in, they'll reach for that and accept it. And then the energy will be there to help them clear or help them ground or help them shield. With kids, even little ones, putting your hand on top of your head's a grounding technique. That's as simple as it gets. You can literally do this for 30 seconds and your energy will be super duper grounded. Just pop you right down. And bring energy back up, which is the other half of grounding. For clearing, you can also ask their guides, like, hey, will you help clear their energy and help shield them, help protect in that way. But when it comes to other little kids, just ask them. Just ask them. Be like, hey, do you want to practice clearing out your energy so you have your own space? Let's do it. Done it with my kids before, taught them how to talk to their guides, talk to the beings around them to protect them, to help keep them safe, to help have good energy there. I mean, all of that. You can totally do it with kids. Yeah, great question. I hear voices in running water. What? That's cool. I hear voices in running water. It's mumbled. Why is that? I bet you're talking to the water. I bet you're talking to the actual water. I wonder, is it, if you want to talk about it here, but is it just out of the faucet or naturally running water? Will you clarify? Because that's freaking interesting and cool. I bet you're literally talking to the water, or the potentially fae or spirits around you, that sort of thing, are using the water as a conduit to speak through. That can also happen. Don't be afraid or freaked out by it, but if you're hearing it and perceiving it, you can use that to actually communicate through. I bet you're super connected to water in general too, so that is why you're really open to that. What a neat thing to do. Play with that. Enjoy that. Now I want to see if I can go hear water that way. I have never heard that before. I live near a lake. I live near a lot of big water. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so excited to go explore that more. That's awesome. Do I know when people are thinking of me? Do they just chill in my head? No, they don't, because I'm not telepathic. I don't read other people's thoughts necessarily. Now, my guides will ping in when they're thinking of me, but that's because we have a relationship where they can do that, which is, also not all the time either. Sometimes they keep me on like a little baby monitor and they're just like watching me until I fall off of something or something, and then they're like, oh, come in and pick me up. That sort of thing. So they can. Nice. Someone said Jesus loves you. That is a deity you can channel as well. There are many deities, and they all have varying degrees of love for humanity. Yeah, so if that's the one you want to talk to, by all means, there's many ones you can talk to. I know someone who works with him quite closely as like a patron deity-esque thing. Oh, you hear people's names when you think of you? That's cool. That's a cool ability. I like it. I've tuned into a pine cone a couple of times. Do you know anything about that? Yes, I do. So objects have consciousness too. They're not the same type of consciousness that we have being sentient. It's a different type of consciousness that kind of comes in. So objects can absolutely have consciousness as well. You can talk to any object, and they can talk back and share back. So absolutely you can talk to a pine cone, and I'm so glad you did. The other thing, if you're talking to things in nature too, don't discredit the fact that you might also be picking up on like fairy energy or nature spirit energy or elemental energy that might also be present, which are more sentient beings thinking more in the vein of ghosts, etc., and less in the vein of actual consciousness of the objects, but sometimes they are connected to an object and using that to communicate through as well. So again, with everything, nuance and context, but you can totally apply it there. Oh. Is grass a collective consciousness or each individual blade? Usually to me it talks collectively together with at least the clumps. Like the roots, if the roots are touching, it becomes like a collective consciousness. Nature stuff is weird though, because it does tend to have more branching and branching and branching, even if we don't think of it as branching and branching and branching. So it's oftentimes like context that builds off of context that builds off of context, that they're like, so you get like this magnitude of spiritual consciousness. But it's not typically blade by blade. Not typically. Yeah, I talk to the spirits of my house. I don't actually have any ghosts in here, but I do have a lot of my guides, and then I have a lot of fairy spirits. There's one who lives in my kitchen. The name we gave him is Cinnamon. It is not his real name. It is his kitchen name. It is Cinnamon. He hangs out in the kitchen. And then I have a couple in here that hang out with my plant over there, which is Harry Potted, the plant that lived. That's the name of my plant. And they hang out over there with Harry Potted. So I talk to them. I talk to the different energies and spirits of my house. And I introduced myself to my house when I moved in, which was this past August. So yeah. What does the afterlife look like? My grandfather passed last Tuesday. So in a very, very simplified version of what happens when we pass. First of all, my condolences. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're thinking of him, and know that when we think to or speak to our past loved ones, they do hear us, for better or worse. But absolutely. So sending all of your love that way, because I know how hard that is. What happens when we pass is we tend to pass and hang around for a week or two after we pass, because we're finishing up stuff. We're watching stuff a lot of times. That's why we get a lot of signs from our loved ones. In the first couple weeks after they pass, all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, there's a butterfly, or, we'll get a phantom phone call from them, or whatever it is, because they're still kind of hanging around. And then after that, we go to what I lovingly call a spiritual spa day, which is where we kind of cope with what it was to be a human, and how our existence was this time, and we heal through stuff, and we navigate stuff, and we do some sort of work. And that's when things kind of go a little quiet. We don't get a lot of communication from our past loved ones during that time, because they're doing their own stuff. They're doing work. They can still hear you, but it's not as hands-on. And then sometime after they come out of that, however long that takes, it totally depends on the individual, how long they'll be in that spiritual spa day processing time. That's when they come through on the other side of that, and all of a sudden you start getting communication again, or having dreams again, or you find that picture of them that you didn't realize you had, and those kinds of things come back up. So that's like and again, there is so many different varied information that can go deeper than that, but in a very just basic form, that's what that is. So Yeah, we actually have time. We get time to cope with humaning. This is, yeah. Do fairies look like the ones that like look like they do in ACOTAR? Can I joke about that? Some do. Some totally do. Some do not. Honestly, the best representation of fairies that I have found in modern fantasy books is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Oh, thank you. It's Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which the second one just came out. I'm going to read it after I finish reading what I'm reading, which is an Egyptian fantasy that I'm currently reading right now. But Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. If you want to like understand how fairies really are in a lot of ways, and I'm not talking about the cultural context of fairies in like Celtic or Germanic lore, because that is a whole spiritual belief that I'm in no way trying to talk about. I'm just talking about from what I channeled. That's a really good resource, a really, really good resource. Also, if you want to know more about fairies, I did a whole YouTube deep dive on them. So you can go check that out. It's like, I don't know, 45 minutes of me just talking fairies 101. Yeah. Yay, I'm so glad you read Encyclopedia of Fairies. It's so good. It's such a good book. Wendell. The Egyptian fantasy I'm reading right now is called Master of Jinn. And it takes place in an alternative universe, Cairo, as if with a couple different like things going on. Like Jinn came into human realms and like work with people, like literally go to office jobs with people levels. And also there's like a lot of very futuristic type technology. So it's kind of if in the 1920s Egypt or early 1900s Egypt and Cairo specifically had gotten that big, like a big steampunk-esque boom. And it's a murder mystery. And it's really interesting. And I like it a lot so far. And it's queer, which I love. What's my opinion of Hecate? She has a lot of opinions. She's really interesting to work with. I think she's a freaking badass. I also think she's been really misrepresented because a couple different religions has kind of taken her vestige and been like, she means all these things. And she doesn't always feel great about that. So I think she's awesome. And if you're being called to reach out to her. She's very divine feminine, specifically divine feminine rage a lot of the time. But she's really interesting. Yeah. If I name/talk to my plants, am I actually talking to something more? You're talking to the consciousness of your plants. Plants are very conscious. They're very, very conscious. And they're very gentle, which I love about plants. Like when you talk to them, when you reach out to their consciousness, you get a lot of gentle energy back from them. Except for trees. Trees are going to tell you how it is. Trees don't lie. Trees are very, very honest, and they don't care about your feelings. And sometimes that's amazing, and sometimes that really sucks. So just... Trees are incredibly wise. They're definitely teachers, but they're not going to Socratic method you. Like if trees are going to teach you, they're going to call you out on your bullshit and you'll be like, wow, I just got completely read to filth by a tree. And that is correct. So that happens. The name of the queer rep book I was just talking about is Master of Jinn. And I haven't finished it yet, so I can't speak to the entirety of it. But so far it's been really awesome. I wish it's by like Djeli somebody. I don't have it handy or I would, it's upstairs. But yeah. Oh, do I think I'll be a guide when it's my time? I do. I do actually think I'll be a guide. I don't know if I'll be a guide right away. I think it will be very intentional. I think I've been a guide before in other incarnation sort of spaces. And I think I kind of prefer that sometimes to being an incarnated, being totally honest. But yeah, I do think I'll be a guide. Whenever it is, whenever I decide to after this. Djeli Clark, thank you. Yeah. What does a patron deity mean? A patron deity is a deity that you have either chosen to work with or has chosen you. That is the main deity that you work with. That's it. It's truly just like the main deity that you work with, that you give the most offerings, that you connect with the most. Deity work is really powerful and really special, and I love deity work. I have such a huge place in my heart for it. But you don't need a patron deity. Not everyone needs a patron deity. You don't even need to have a deity if you don't want to. But yeah, so that's where it kind of stems from, is the patron deity is like your main friend. Oh, what was that? I'm sorry, I just was reading that. Ouija boards are something else. I don't recommend using them unless you have a lot of experience with spiritual communication. Someone said something about a Ouija board and I couldn't read it, like jumped really quick. But I don't recommend using a Ouija board unless you have a lot of it, like a lot of experience with spiritual communication, they're not inherently bad, but they can become inherently bad. They can become a very bad connection tool to stuff that you don't necessarily want to talk about. But they can also be, oh, you ended up in a mental hospital. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That is horrific. Again, don't fuck with Ouija boards if you don't know what you're doing. Damn, I hope he's okay now, though. That's really scary. But yeah, so Ouija boards are never a tool I recommend to people because honestly, the things you can do without them are much better benefit than the things you can do with them most of the time. Yeah, I don't know, float by me. I know there's one of my guides is walking around the room and I've been like watching them kind of ping around. So I'm not surprised you can see it on camera, to be totally honest. She's hanging out. She likes when I do lives. What are the different types of guides based on their experience? There's no like set types of spirit guides. They all fill a different role based on what you're needing and what you came and asked them to do and the contract between you and them. Truly, like that is the root of spirit guides. However, you do tend to have spirit protectors. That's a common role. Also kind of like advisors or holders of your map, where you'll give your map to one or more spirit guides and be like, make sure I get to these things. And they help you out with that. Oftentimes you'll have some like mentor ones or ones that are specifically for specific things you're working on in this life, like communication or connection or magical abilities or whatever. So there's no set roles for spirit guides. There's a ton of different things that they can do. And I've seen everything from spirit guides that help with like swimming. I saw a guide that only helps when someone is swimming. I was like, is swimming a big deal for you? And they're like, yeah, like I almost drowned when I was a kid and I had to like overcome that and learn how to swim. I was like, oh, cool. Well, you have a guide that helps with that. That was like a key life thing for you. And they're helping with that. To like very general guides that are just like, yeah, I've incarnated with them in every past life and didn't want them to leave me behind. So I became a guide in this one and I just kind of helped them with life stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. So there's a million different things that guides can be. A ton. Always ask your guides for validation. If you are wondering if they've responded, like all means, be like, hey, will you validate this ping for me? Or will you validate this information I just picked up on? Like, and that can be like a physical validation. Like literally your phone goes off right then, or you look down, it's 11:11, or a bird flies right past your face, or your favorite song comes on the radio next. I mean, there's a ton of different ways that they can validate you. So don't be afraid to ask for that if you're trying to figure out when they communicate and when they don't. Also try to communicate to your guides via your strongest clairsense. So there's 8 different psychic perception styles. Those psychic perception styles consist of seeing, sensing, both physically and emotionally, feeling, both physically and emotionally, knowing, hearing, tasting, smelling, tangibly touching. There's a ton of different ways that you can pick up on stuff. And if you want to know what your senses are, I do have a free exercise to help you figure that out. It's through the link in my bio, so by all means go check that out. But we all have them. And so if you try to talk to your guides using your strongest senses, that will really help. And I do have a YouTube video on that too, actually, now that I think about it, specifically on how to talk to guides using each of the senses. My kids are all texting in the group chat. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but my phone is going off. But yeah, that's another way I recommend communicating with your guides, because that will be the easiest way for you to receive communication, because it's the easiest way you already naturally perceive energetic information. Hopefully that makes sense. What do birthday angel numbers mean? So when it comes to angel numbers in general, I do not subscribe to the idea that they are set meanings for each and every single number. Yes, numerology is really powerful, but that is more for like figuring out your life path or soul number or different things like that. And those have a lot of value and benefit. But when you see repetitive numbers or repeating numbers, most of the time, those repeating numbers are your guides trying to get your attention or to validate something for you, or getting at your making you pay attention via something they know you're going to see, which is oftentimes a birthday repeated number or a significant repeated number or a specific validation or synchronicity, those types of things. So whenever I see that, first acknowledge, be like, hey, I saw the number, and then you can build from that and pause and be like, is there something I need to know right now? Again, go to your strongest psychic sense, see what comes through. If it's nothing, it's nothing. Just be like, cool, thanks for being with me. I saw your validation. Or you might get a ping, and then you can ask for further validation, or be like, oh, yeah, I did make a good decision. Thank you for complimenting me, or whatever it is that comes through. Yeah. Oh, you guys are so awesome. I did just see the time, though, and I do have to go make dinner before I'm having a wine and cheese night with my friends this evening over at the house to catch up, since I was gone for a while. But you all are awesome. thank you for hanging out with me. I'm sending you all of the love and magic, like directly right back to you. Again, I do try to hop on every Thursday night, or at least sometime around Thursday, to do these lives. And I do post all of them on my YouTube. So if you missed part of this and you want to catch back up on it, like, please go check it out. Thank you guys so much. That's so sweet. But I truly just want to help, and I love getting to connect more in this community space. Oh, it's so pretty. I want to make one of those. Like, I really want like a big fluffy one, you know, like not even with real flowers. Like, I'll even make it with fake flowers, but I just want like a really big fluffy one to wear probably just on May 1st, to be totally honest, but just like, woo to do, like every time I see that one, I'm like, I want that. But yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much. You are all magical, wonderful beings. Enjoy the energy of this weekend. Expect weird connections to come up this weekend. I don't know what that means exactly, but my guides have been harping on it, so I give this to you. And I'll see you next time. Mwah.